Today, we're going to be going over a great quarterback football IQ quiz to test your knowledge of the position. So if you guys are not familiar with our quiz style videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a pre-snap look like the one shown on the screen right here from the quarterback perspective, ask you a series of questions about the coverage, offensive play concepts that'll work against the coverage, give you guys a chance to pause the video, think about your answer, then we'll go ahead and play the clip and talk about why your answer was correct or wrong. So this is going to be a two-part question. So the two parts of this question is pre-snap look. What do you guys think this coverage is? So pre-snap, what coverage do you think this is? And then question number two, what are some of the best route combinations, routes, or play concepts to work against this specific coverage? So guys, two-part question. So it's again, what coverage do you think this is? Question number two, what are the best play concepts and route combinations to work against this coverage? You guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So first things first as a quarterback, whenever we are trying to decide what the coverage is, and let's start with why it's important to know what the coverage is. Because if you know what the coverage is, you know essentially what a defense is trying to accomplish. But every single coverage has strengths and every single coverage has weaknesses. So if you know what the coverage is ahead of time, pre-snap, you know what routes, what route combinations, what play concepts are going to work best against that coverage based on the weaknesses of that coverage. But to be able to find out the coverage, you need something called a pre-snap process as a quarterback. So when you come up to the line of scrimmage, you have to know where to look. We got to look at the safeties first. And again, there's another way to do a pre-snap process. Some people will teach look at the box, then the corners, then the safeties. You kind of work inside out. I like working outside in. I like looking at the safeties first, then the corners, then the box. That's personal preference. Not saying it's right or wrong, but that's at least what I look at first as a quarterback. Now, what you want to be able to identify is how many safeties there are. So we see that there's two deep safeties. Okay, that can mean a number of things. That can mean it's cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. There are variations of cover 2. There are variations of cover 4. That doesn't necessarily tell us everything about the coverage, but it can tell us a little bit. Then we want to look to the corners. Now, the corners don't really tell us too much because corners can lie to us. Corners will show that it's pressed, then they'll bail. They'll show that it's bailed, then they'll come down and press. So we don't necessarily need to look at them, but we still want to pay attention to them and see kind of how they're playing. And then we want to look at maybe the people lined up over my slot wide receivers, the number 2, the number 3 right here, these two defenders. Then we peek the box, see if it looks like they're bringing pressure or what. So now, with all that being said, these two safeties look like they're cover 2 safeties. They're lined up outside the hash. They're 10 to 12 yards deep. Look like they're in a backpedal stance. Look like they're going to be trying to cover this deep half of the field or play deep help. I look at both of my corners. They're both in squatted stances. Eyes are on the wide receivers. That looks a lot like cover 2, right? Where the corners are sitting in the flats, corners sitting in the flats, and these safeties have the deep half of the field. However, though, these two guys tell me that it's a variation of cover 2 and not just cover 2. So if you guys said cover 2, you're partially correct. If you guys said cover 2 man, that is 100% correct. Cover 2 man is where everybody's in man coverage underneath, and then we have two safeties deep. So this is a very, very strong defensive coverage against the deep pass. How we're able to identify that is that we see that there's two eye safeties. The corners, honestly, it looks the same. They could play cover 2 zone like this. They could play cover 2 man like this, but it's these two defenders, this outside linebacker and this nickel, who are lined up over my number 3 and are lined up over my number 2, both in squatted stances, eyes on the wide receivers, inside leverage. That tells me that it's 2-man. Now, 2-man coverage, the second part of this question, what are some route combinations, some plays that could work against a 2-man defense? Now, before we get into those route combinations, fellas, if you're a quarterback and you would like to train with us this offseason, guys, we're going to be coming out to 10 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So, guys, if you're local to one of these cities listed on the screen below, check out that very first link in the description below where you can sign up and get more information on what we'll be covering and how you can sign up for our camps. Guys, we're going to be coming out to Dallas, Texas next, then Nashville, then Chicago, Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Detroit, Boise, and Los Angeles. Guys, all of these camps have less than 10 spots remaining. They will all be sold out. These 3 on this side are already sold out, but the rest over here will be sold out by the end of this month. So guys, if you'd like to train with us, 2 whole days of work, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our off-season camps. Now, let's get back into this. So, now, route combinations work well against this. What routes work well against what play concepts. So we obviously don't like what? We obviously don't like anything deep. We run a deep post here from the number 1. We got a safety who's covering it. We got a corner who's in man-to-man. I probably don't like a seam. We could have a double team version of that. I maybe don't like a deep bender. A safety could make a play on it. What I like to work is anything underneath. Because in 2-man coverage, it's not like cover 1 or cover 0. It's man-to-man coverage, but it's a little bit different for the quarterback. In 2-man, because 2 are deep and it's man coverage underneath, let's say maybe my running back's running a swing and this linebacker's going with him. They're only going to be bringing a 4-man pass rush, and I have 5 to block 4. So I have some time as a quarterback, so I could let a drag develop. I probably don't like a drag if it's cover 0, right? Like, let's pretend these 2 safeties are coming down and they're bringing pressure. They're bringing 6. I only got 5 to block 6. That drag takes a while to develop. I like something like a quick fade or a quick slant. But against 2-man, I have some time. I also like maybe something like a whip route here from the slot. I also like maybe something like a jerk route, if you will. A jerk route is where you run 3 steps to the slant, fake like you're doing a whip, and then you cut back inside. So longer developing routes underneath are things that I could do against this type of coverage. Another thing is a running back running a choice route. He's manned up on a linebacker usually. That's a great matchup that we could exploit. Now, with all that being said, that's what you guys were saying on this. That's correct. It's not a normal version of man coverage, I guess you could say. We want to attack underneath. Now, there's also somebody who is not accounted for on this play. It's an offensive player, and that is the quarterback. So the quarterback draw game, the quarterback run is very, very strong. Because imagine if we just put everybody on verts, right? Everybody on verts and I put a running back on a swing. There would be only 4 guys here to make plays. And this quarterback could pull that thing up the middle and get a good chunk of yardage. So, guys, that's what this coverage is, a 2-man defense. And, guys, if you said routes underneath, longer developing routes, running back routes, quarterback run, that would be correct in the best play concepts against this look, okay? So let's move on. Next clip here, next clip. So now, next clip, this is going to be a single-part question. So what coverage do you guys think this is? So what coverage does this look like? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So remember, we talked about having what? A pre-snap process at the quarterback position. I have to be able to look at the safeties first. This is my pre-snap process. Not saying this is the only way, but this is the one I saw the most success with, right? Because as a quarterback, sometimes it can get a little hectic, especially if you're in like a no-huddle offense, an offense that is trying to go fast, trying to move the ball fast. Sometimes you come up to the line of scrimmage, you don't even read the coverage, right? And that was something that got me in a little bit of trouble as a player because you almost like, without reading the coverage, you're keyed in on like, let's say it's a concept like, let's say maybe it's just like a quick slant and then like something from the outside, but you're not keyed in on the coverage and a defender jumps one of these routes and you didn't see it coming because you didn't identify the coverage, right? It gets very easy to do that. So this pre-snap process that I'm giving you guys where I went safeties, corners, box, that was something that I saw a lot of success with, okay? And it made the game kind of slow down for me. Not saying it's the only way again, but that's what I saw a lot of success with. So we come up, we see that there's 2 eye safeties, right? One is lined up outside the hash, one is lined up inside the hash. One is in more of a backpedal stance. The other is in kind of more of like kind of a squatted patient stance, right? Now I look to the corners. One is pressed up. One is a little bit off. Now I look to the box. It's a 3-4, I guess you could say, defense, if you will. It's really a 3-3. I wouldn't consider this guy in the box, but you could think of it like a 3-4, if you will. He's like a fifth DB on the field. This is definitely a nickel formation. You got the Will, you got the Mike, you got the Sam, and then you have another safety here who's the nickel. Now, so with all that being said, this looks a lot like something called cover 6, and it is cover 6, right? So if you guys said cover 6, that is correct. Cover 6 is when one side of the field is in cover 4 and the other side of the field is in cover 2. More specifically, the side of the field to the boundary, like the smaller side of the field. So this ball is on like the left middle. That means the left side of the field is the cover 2 side. Now, teams will do this to try to disguise up the coverage. Teams will do this to try to mess with offensive play concepts, try to mess with the quarterback. But how we can identify this is the safeties, right? Because this corner down here, a lot of people will say, oh, what's the difference in cover 2 and cover 4? They'll say in cover 4, this corner is going to backpedal, play the deep fourth, and that's true. And then they always say, oh, well, he'll be 7 to 8 yards off pre-snap. That's not always true because this guy, just how he's showing press, at the last second he could bail and this safety could move back over the top and play 4. So we can't rely solely on the corners. It's about the safeties. We were looking for 3 things with the safeties. We were looking for depth, we were looking for width, and we were looking for stance. So you see how this safety inside the hash, this safety outside the hash. He's lined up outside the hash because he has ground to cover over here. He's got to get to his deep half. We're looking for depth. These safeties are pretty even, but sometimes you might see a safety on the cover 2 side a little bit deeper because, again, he's got some ground to cover. And then number 3, you want to look for stance. Backpedal stance. I call this skinny feet. So we see that that's how that safety looks. Wide, skinny feet, maybe a little deeper sometimes. Oh, that looks like cover 2. Other safety, more squatted stance, in tighter, not lined up on the outside, maybe the corner's off as well. Okay, that's cover 4. So that's how you guys can identify this, and that's what that coverage is. This is a cover 6 defense. So if you guys said cover 6, you'd be 100% correct.